We're talking about challenging the stigmas that are associated with seeking mental health treatment to recognize what it is. So you're seeing an uptick in diagnoses. No, what you're actually seeing is more people seeking to actually find out what the diagnosis is. That's exactly what we're fighting for. When you look at it from a cultural lens, they might have different ways of seeing it. As you know, me being in the West Indian culture, we might have different ways of seeing it. You being African American, you might have different ways of seeing it. But either way you go, it's like, oh, the devil's got that boy. You know, something else along those lines, or I'm just going to pray it away and ignore it instead of treating it. These are all attitudes that are kind of culturally rooted, right? These are things that are handed down past generations that we now have to challenge in saying that, hey, those things, while they might be important to your identity, the here and now of the situation is even far greater than that, and we need to break down that barrier.
Welcome to Mission Control. At Peralta Design, we launch brands. But for now, let's launch right into this episode.
3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Welcome to this episode of Mission Control. This is your host, Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we launch brands. And we've got a great show for you today. We have the one and only Dr. Marlon Gray, CEO of Empower Youth.
I just love that button that you guys press when it's just like, hey, yeah, everyone's like super excited to see me.
The studio audience has been waiting.
It made me excited to see me. It was kind of crazy.
They've been here since last week at 3 when you were supposed to be here. They've been just camping.
I just wanted to make sure that people know that I did not show up at 3 o'clock. I did not pull a Lauryn Hill type of situation where you thought I was coming, but I really didn't make it. We had to pivot, which is one of the things in business you learn how to do.
We honored their tickets for today. Exactly.
Put the sleeping bags away.
Exactly. So no, but they've been going wild. They knew you were coming. The line is formed. So
I'm just excited to be here.
I hope you brought enough parting gifts for
I got
everyone.
I got a little swag thanks to Peralta Design. You know what I mean?
Excellent. So also want to introduce Jorge,
The brother who's always on point, but you could keep the horsepower joint.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay. And Kevin on the soundboard.
Good morning.
All right, Kev, you kept it. You always keep it conservative.
Simple.
No Jamaican air horn or anything for us.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, there it is. That's what I was waiting for.
There we go. And of course, we have Carter in the background. I just want to shout out Carter, the young Marlon.
Yeah, the future. My son Carter's here with us. Took a nice little ride up here from Jersey.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important that we let our kids see the hustle that kind of goes into it. Whatever they choose to do in their life in their own special way, it kind of matters that they're able to envision it first, right?
Absolutely.
So you bring them along for the ride.
You got to see it so you can be it.
That's it.
You took the beast out today. You brought it up to Merritt parking lot.
Yeah, I don't really know if it's a beast compared to yours. You know what I mean? It's like Teen Titans kind of. You know what I mean? It's the smaller version of the cool one. You got the cool one, with all the horsepower. So
I'm looking forward to taking them out for a spin.
Absolutely. After
this, but you were sharing earlier in the when we were doing the banter talk for in the green room here or the red room at PD. Mm-hmm. We were talking about
always
branding.
on brand. Look at that.
Yeah, we were talking about branding.
Yeah.
But you're sharing some office space with somebody some of our fans might know about.
Absolutely. And the branding actually is exactly the same. So the one and only MKBHD, I know him as Marquez Brownlee. We had a space in Kearney, New Jersey. We actually just moved out of that space. But when we first came in there in, I would say 2016, there were only a few Black and brown entrepreneurs in this incubator space type of setup. And so, we'd see each other on the way to the lunchroom, whatever the case is, and kind of do what our people do, just walking through the hallway, give each other the nod real quick, don't really know what it means, type of thing. But
see you.
Yeah, it's like an I see you nod, right? Yeah. So his studio was, when you first get off the elevator, his studio was right in front of you, and this was like all glass. So there was really no privacy in these units. So you could see what's going on. So you see this big 6'4" black kid, he's like, got to be about maybe 25 or whatever at that time. And you see him in this like empty office, and he's got a standing desk, but the standing desk is like literally at its limit of height because he's so doggone tall, right? And so you're like sitting there like, what does this guy do? Like, who is this guy? What does he do?
Did you know who he was at that first meeting, or were you already a familiar?
So that's the funny part about it. I had maybe seen one video, but it didn't really connect at that time. But we just talked about how your kids need to come along for the ride, right? I've always believed in that. So it was actually my son who actually highlights, like, you know who that is? I'm like, should I know who he is, right? Right. But I like when he explained it, I was like, yes, I remember watching one of his tech reviews at one point, and it helped me make a decision on something that I was actually looking to buy.
Wow.
Like, he was so in depth, he was so good at what he did. And I watched him go from that big standing desk to building out this very large space, made it kind of like a lounge kind of area. So he had all this technology inside the room. Didn't realize like how big this guy was trending until I came off the elevator one day and I was watching, and they had all these cameras that were a little different than usual in the office as he was live streaming him making it over to 5 million followers, right? And I was like, this guy's major. You know what I mean?
He's been doing it for quite some time.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
He's been at this, and that kind of speaks to this idea of all these so-called influencers that are popping up, telling people, here's how you're going to get here, and they've never been there themselves.
I love that about folks, and I think that he represents, you know, the kind of influencers who have real, true influence that you should aspire to. He's a guy that knows his craft. When you listen to his video, like, even though he's able to kind of meet his audience where they are, he still is not scared to go in depth to let you. It's not to let you know that he knows his stuff, but it builds up a serious credibility behind what he says. So even if you don't know something, and maybe what he said just went completely over your head, you're like, you know what? This guy, I trust this guy, right? And he could make or break a brand. Like, when I pull up to the studio, you would see a line of cars. It's self-driving Tesla, self-driving Porsche, self-driving this, that, and the third. People were sending him stuff just to get him to actually review. That would be, I'm not sure if that's his full compensation, but a part of his compensation, because you would actually see he would keep them. He would actually still have them. And he was struggling with his Tesla. He loved that Tesla. I think he got rid of it to the self-driving Porsche now, but he had this Tesla for a long time, and he was struggling with it. He actually documented his struggle as a part of what he was doing, and continuing to work with the brand on actually improving, right? Like, that's really real, true influence. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, he's the ideal, you know, what I would call the subject matter expert, you know, where he's built a brand, like you mentioned the word trust, but trust only comes from that consistent message that you see. No matter when you catch him, he's on point. He's describing
all of those things, genuine, authentic, you know, and the fact that, and starting from humble beginnings too, like literally seeing the first videos in his dorm room in college. And already I was like, yeah, I like the cut of this guy's jib, and like the depth that he would go into, and the quality and the effort. And then now it's a whole other level. And I think but it shows that journey. You know, it's all those things that we preach. Put your brand out there, stand behind it, be genuine, be authentic, be yourself, and that's
consistent.
Be consistent.
Well, consistency, and he's stayed hungry and kept doing it. Like you said, he didn't just rely on his name. I mean, he's big enough now to do that.
Yeah.
Because we've seen a lot of influencers over the years, various different categories, where they get this big brand and name. Now they're like, I'll hire people to do that. I don't need to do this myself. I don't have to get it as in depth because I'm going to get millions of views anyway just off the name alone.
Yeah.
But no, he still puts all the work in. And
he's got the hunger, right? And aside from the hunger that he really demonstrates in his leadership back to his people, you know, it's very much the same feeling I got when I walked into this office, right? Like, we talked about all the things he consistently is. He's consistently also on brand, right? Like, when you see, you know, him, you automatically think red, black, white, right? You look down at his feet. He's got, you know, Jordan Breads ones. He wears them to death. He's been, you know, had these shoes for years since I moved in. He still wears those things. Like, he's always on brand. And when you look at his office with all the cool stuff, you know, everything is kind of consistent, like MKB HD branding. So it's like, you almost can't go anywhere and see that combination without somehow, some way kind of thinking of him, right? And so I think his branding is very strong. I think that it's brilliant because he seemingly did this with very limited resources to begin with. Like, he started off his first video, he was super, super young, like cute little, right? Like,
those are the ones I remember.
right.
Somehow he like grew up overnight as far as I'm concerned. Because I remember him as a little guy with with like Game Boys and just like handheld, you know, gaming devices. And now he's like this, you know, like you were sharing because he had a 911 and one that he like tricked out. He made it like matte black.
You said that he
was
broke
doing
all the
things,
rules.
He was doing things to it that were right
sacrilege.
Sacrilegious to the Porsche brand, but you know, to each his own. You know, the calipers weren't the right colors and things like that. Yep. But yeah, this young man has blown up, and I think to your point, we can switch a little bit over to the importance of having branding or having that iconography.
Sure.
That represents your brand that can be put on swag because he's doing well with the merch now.
He's crushing it with the merch. Like I would see him sometimes or see people kind of walking around with just like he has, you know, things that are just kind of like giveaways and other things you can kind of like buy. Like there's like 2 separate markets for that kind of thing that he kind of, you know, puts out there. But he always has like really cool stuff. It's almost like, you know, the branding is one piece of it, but also staying connected to your potential audiences and giving them things that could be useful and just printing those things on swag that could be useful even for a completely different purpose. Like it could be stress balls. Well, he's not in mental health. I'm in mental health. We give out stress balls, right? Right. It could be whatever it is, but it's super coffee mug. Right. Like what you're drinking out of right now, like something that powerful just keeps the brand in your mind, keeps all those things in your mind. The thing is, as established as he is, I'm wondering at this point who he even has to sell to anymore, because I feel like his work sells itself, but he's still very consistent with letting you know what his brand is and putting that brand out there and representing it very strongly, and his people do as well.
Right. Well, it's also being memorable, being repeatable.
Yep.
It's the same reason, I use this in my workshops, a 2-year-old can be in a backseat and see the Golden Arches and start going crazy. They can't read yet.
Not to say it sounds familiar.
They can't read yet, right? But they can't read yet. But by age 2, they've been indoctrinated into what that symbol means. Oh yeah. What it smells like. What it tastes like.
Oh yeah. Can't even pronounce it yet. It's Mickey Donald's. That's all they know.
Right. But they know the Golden Arches, and it's like every brand should have their version of that.
Well, they associate it with an experience, right? Like it might not
be
and
a consistent experience at that.
Yes.
It doesn't matter where I go in the nation, in the world, that you're gonna, you know, that's gonna be the same.
McDonald's fries are gonna be what they're gonna be. The nuggets are gonna be what they're gonna be, and the little happy dance you do when you're 2 years old is gonna be what it is, right? And so, like
when you crack they sprinkle on the fries.
Yeah. I'm telling you. McDonald's, we're watching you. But like parents around the world, we're watching you. Like, you know, it's like you tell your kid to look away like there was just an accident or something every time you pass one because they're just going to throw this fit. Yeah. But it's an experience that they associate it with, right? And like that's one of the things, and we don't lose that as we grow into adults. Like that's something in childhood. It's not just the McDonald's is good. There's like an experience to it. It's exciting to them. Like I remember McDonald's and sitting down next to the little Ronald McDonald, whatever. There was like an experience with just getting your toy out of the Happy Meal, all the rest of that stuff. And so something as small as the right iconography and the branding aspect of what you're doing can just trigger a series of feelings and emotions actually within people as well.
Absolutely. That's the sometimes we refer to that as ASMR. Mm-hmm. I just had the autonomous sensory meridian response. You know, like you get the senses going, you get the smells and the sounds and the little crunch of the fry when you're reaching in for the fries.
Yeah. I can hear it right now.
Everybody's hungry now.
I almost said, "Mommy, are we there yet?" Because that's what that was associated with.
Exactly. Right? But listen, guys, when we come back, we're going to hear all about Empower You, this New Jersey-based behavioral health firm that you've built and founded and are the CEO of. When we come right back after these words. All right. Well, this episode here is brought to you by the Connecticut Small Business Boost Fund. It gives small business owners access to flexible funding for capital expenditures and working capital and connects them with support services. Small businesses and nonprofits can borrow between $5,000 and $500,000 depending on eligibility and need. And you can spend how you spend the money. It could be equipment, payroll, utilities, supplies, marketing, advertising, all that good stuff. And they're very low interest over a 60 to 72 month term. You can get more information and you can apply at ctsmallbusinessboostfund.org. The doctor is in the house. He made a house call today from New Jersey.
I am not the type of doctor that can save your life. I could just help you get through it, man. I could just help explain it to you.
All you're going to do is say, hang in there, man.
Hang in there, buddy.
They're on their way.
This. You are enough. Right.
Well, I need CPR right now. Yeah. Oh, man. So, you know, you are a social entrepreneur, a conscious capitalist, right?
Saw that book in the office here somewhere.
Yes, I was part of the chapter here. Shout out to Larry Bingaman from the Regional Water Authority, who got me involved with conscious capitalism. So you're based in New Jersey. You're serving children, families, and adults affected by challenges ranging from mental health to intellectual and developmental disabilities, including autism and other behavioral disorders. So we can't wait to hear about what makes Empower You different. I know that you have some unique approaches, and you're reaching, I would say underserved communities as well. And I'm really intrigued by the cultural and experiential relatability.
Sure.
Because there are, it seems like autism and other, I would say, spectrum disorders are more prevalent, it seems like. But we want to hear all about you first. So take us back. Tell us the story.
How far back do we want to go?
Like when you were hit with the gamma radiation and got your superpowers.
Well, no, that's the wrong guy. I had a radioactive spider. I was just walking. I was walking in the park one day. You know what I mean? And just spider just jumped up.
Okay,
Marlon, Miles. To start
I was
with the
gonna say
M.
Miles. I was gonna say Miles Morales. He does favor him. You could play him in the live action.
My son could play him, and not me. I don't have the hair for it. You know what I mean? When was the last time you guys saw a bald Spider-Man? Right? Like not even in the metaverse they have a bald spider.
But the mask would fit a lot better if
I have to go back and watch and see it. And there's like 8,000 Spider-Men.
I know. What happens to their hair? I think it would look better.
They're spider horses and not a spider bald guy.
See, this is crazy.
Well, the multiverse now, there could be a bald one. So.
Let's advocate for us hairless brothers in the metaverse.
I also just, by the way, I love this. I'm so interested about hearing more of the story because I feel like, especially in our culture, in Black and brown families, mental health doesn't always come to the forefront.
And
you're
it's
weak.
so
You're weak if you have that.
Absolutely.
So the fact that you are hitting this head on for me is something that hits close to home and something I think that is so important. So I'm curious to know where did it all get started. And you can go back to the beginning if you want. I was born on whatever, but we want to hear what the journey.
Well,
was
I was born on a Saturday morning in Queens, New York. No, seriously, I actually was born on a Saturday morning in Queens, New York. I'm one of those nerds who goes back and tries to see what kind of weather reports we had out there. But originally from Queens, New York. First generation Guyanese. So that's another aspect of things too. When parents are coming from different countries with different cultures and different ways of raising kids, and then you come to an American culture that looks at things differently, and you're a kid actually growing up through that. It's like what you're seeing and what you're kind of getting at home are two different things as well, kind of confusing if you don't understand it. I've been taking my time to kind of understand what those things were. I would say that, my why is actually pretty personal. I'm pretty honest about it. I say that, I would consider myself as being what an at-risk youth is, what by definition, really would be now. There's a person who's facing traumatic experiences at home, school, and in the community, who could, act out on some of those behaviors. Back in the day, you'd hear parents or old folks, you'd be running the streets. So I feel like old folks back in at least Queens, especially the Caribbean ones, they used to just say the worst things. Like it was like a slippery slope fallacy. Like all I did was step on your lawn. You're going to end up dead or in jail. Like, yo, but when they used to say back in the day that you could end up dead or in jail, that's essentially what at-risk youth, that's literally what they're at risk.
Those were your two options.
Those were your two options types of things, right? And some of the stuff was, due to your home environment. Some of the things were just due to challenges that you might have had that have affected you in the community in terms of how you socialize or interact with your community around you, how you interact with school, how things are going at home, that kind of thing, right? And so growing up in what they used to call Homicide, Hollis back in the 80s, right? It just gives you an indicator of what the neighborhoods were actually like. There were a lot of immigrant families that were living in the neighborhoods. We had some gangs in the neighborhoods as well. I lived across from 201st, like I was on 201st and Jamaica, right? So 201st and Jamaica is literally right up a park that's maybe about 2 blocks long. That's like right there. That same park that you were playing in, you could see somebody actually OD in. Like you couldn't go and hang out late at night at that park. Like kids just want to play. You couldn't play there though, right? That was Homicide Hollis back in the 80s, right? I remember one of the more traumatizing experiences that I've been in. Like you could be home just chilling on a Saturday and hear gunshots go off and you don't know if people are actually celebrating or if there's a gang fight that's going on outside and people are actually getting shot at, right? A young lady who had a nephew with autism. I didn't know what it was, right? And, you know, being Caribbean, we didn't say the right words or the proper words, you know, to
Touched
describe.
Or something. They would say.
Yeah, oh, the boy, the devil got the man. Right. You know what I mean? Like, they would say, you know, things like that. I came to realize in this field, it was actually autism, and there were no services. I remember the van that this young man would actually take to go to and fro in terms of school, camps, whatever, said invalid coach. Right. That's actually what they called that population. I mean, if you look at it and you actually break it down and say it differently, like KRS-One from, you know, overseer, officer. If you actually look back at and pronounce, it's invalid. Right. That's how they would refer to people
Very
like this.
Very institutional.
Correct. And this child is what we would refer to as being on the autism spectrum on the lower functioning range, right? And so not able to articulate with words, not necessarily able to, you know, respond to talk therapy or just commands. This young man actually killed his caretaker, right? In a fit of rage, right? Like these are just childhood experiences that you're growing up and you're actually seeing, right? So some of those things, if you don't process them correctly, could actually impact you. They can impact how you look at the world. It can impact your trust on people. It can attract, you know, safety. One of the basic needs that children have. It could affect all of those things and literally place you at risk, right? And so being that at-risk youth, I will say, had a lot of problems at home. The way of raising kids was a very, very different type of way. It was more like, you know, either we're going to shame you into compliance or we're going to beat it into you.
Yep. That belt was right on deck.
Yeah, the belt stayed ready. It stayed ready. It's like, it's almost like it knew when its name was called. It's like, you know, if I just did something wrong, it was like, it was like ready for duty. I'm like, yo, come on, like give it a break, right? And when you take a look at all of those experiences, and then especially I think at this point in life now, 42 years old, making it to this place, taking that pain and turning it into power, I actually look at myself as being very fortunate. I look at myself as being a lower percentage of people who make it up out of those situations to make it to this place. And it's not my story. Even though I want to share my story doesn't matter as much as the 97% or so who don't. And how do we go back and help? How do we go back and make a big difference in their lives, right? And so when I think of Empower You, we have shaped ourselves to be a learning organization that seeks to empower the individuals that seek to empower individuals, you know, affected by mental health challenges, substance abuse, at-risk behavior, things like ADHD, you know, oppositional defiant disorder, you know, what have you, right? We take a look at all of those elements of the behavioral health spectrum, and we try to actually hit them at their hardest points so that we can kind of solve them anywhere. So that kind of brings us into a unique approach and really a really long-winded way of answering your initial question about making what makes us different, et cetera, is that we really look for the hardest points in any one of those areas to tackle. And we figure that once we're able to do that, we can provide solutions basically anywhere the problem should arise, right? And so what I look at from a mental health lens, when I then take a look back into my history and what could have worked, there were calls for help. There were actually calls home like, hey, listen, you know, Marlon might be a little depressed or something's going on with X, Y, and Z. But that culturally was like weakness.
Right.
You're a man. You're not supposed to be crying. You're not supposed to be feeling any feelings. Like, get over it. And by the way, you need to get A's. If you get an A-, that belt's coming right back out, right? And so when I think about what could have helped, I take a look at the fact that if we had people who were actually representative of us, that were actually in that helping field, because those people back then did not look anything like us. So our attitudes and generational traumas associated with interacting with other cultures, et cetera, they actually stopped us from actually helping, right? From receiving the help that we could have used. So we have this concept of cultural relatability. It's the experience of actually understanding from firsthand lived in experience what it's actually like to walk through the shoes of a person that you're seeking to help, which is actually, especially in today's society, we were talking about influencers and all the rest of that stuff. It's actually really critical to have somebody who understands the experience of being first generation, who understands the experience of actually coming to this country looking for a better way and trying to raise kids as well. Because from the child's end, you could actually understand your parents. On the parents' end, they can kind of understand what's going on with their children as well, but they're receiving that information from somebody who actually understands them, right? And so we promote that as a part of our initiatives here. We look to not just Black and brown, clinicians and developing them, We look at all of the challenges that they might face, from language barriers to licensing challenges. One of the things that's very well documented is a lot of the mental health licensing is inherently racist, right? It's not racist, but it's biased in the way that it's written by what they would say old white women, right? And there's actually an old white woman out of New Jersey who talks about this now. That, if you are a Black clinician who's working in the inner cities, your responses to some of those licensing questions is going to be different than the person who actually wrote the test, who's never been in that position. That person can give you the theoretical of what you should do, but because you've walked in those streets and you actually have that experience, your reaction would be different. So when you look at it, now do our inner city kids have the same level of care as our non-inner city kids, right? Because if the licensing is stopping somebody from practicing, then that inner city child now doesn't have somebody who's actually culturally or experientially relatable to them. And neither does that family or that person seeking help. So that's one of the things that we look at to build and develop, but it's not just in the Black and brown communities, it's anywhere it's needed.
Right. And I think empathy is a big piece where you just don't, if you don't relate, then you're going to give less leeway. You're going to be less empathetic.
Yep.
You're just going to be like, okay, well, this kid is checked out, but you don't know, single parent home.
Yep.
Kid's getting dropped off at 11 at night. He's not getting a good night's sleep. There's all these factors that they just don't even relate to.
Just the ability to understand someone. You know what I mean? You can hear someone, but to truly listen and to understand and comprehend, when you have been either had a similar experience or been adjacent to those experiences, you're able to connect that much more deeply.
Yep.
And then you can do your job better. And when you're so far distanced from it, it's almost, I don't want to say that you're incapable. I'm sure there's plenty of people with a good heart who would love to service that community, but there's just you're
representation
missing
definitely has to matter.
The representation does matter. And when you look at, I forget who the CEO of Pepsi was, but it was like back in the 70s, he actually was talking about, is our boardroom representative of the people who are actually consuming our services the most? And I think that that's a powerful question for any organization to really and truly ask itself. And it's not to say that just because you don't have the same cultural background as a person that you'd be bad for that person or you'd be a bad therapist. What we're talking about is actually something larger than that. We're talking about challenging the stigmas that are associated with seeking mental health treatment to recognize what it is, right? So you're seeing an uptick in diagnoses. No, what you're actually seeing is more people seeking to actually find out what the diagnosis is. That's exactly what we're fighting for. That's exactly what we're looking for, right? When you look at it from a cultural lens, in the Latino, communities and cultures, they might have different ways of seeing it. As me being in the West Indian culture, we might have different ways of seeing it. You being African American, you might have different ways of seeing it. But either way you go, it's like, oh, the devil's got that boy, something else along those lines, or I'm just going to pray it away and ignore it. Instead of treating it. These are all attitudes that are kind of culturally rooted, right? These are things that are handed down past generations that we now have to challenge in saying that, hey, those things, while they might be important to your identity, the here and now of the situation is even far greater than that. And we need to break down that barrier and actually have you seeking the assistance that you actually need.
They might have preconceived notions. I know in the Latino community and, most Caribbean, they almost had someone in their towns that was like the healer.
Yes.
So there are issues with there are challenges already with what their perception is of modern medicine.
Yep.
Medication.
Yep.
Because I'm sure some of these behavioral issues, you guys can say, well, he or she may qualify or do well if we can put them on a certain regimen.
Right.
And then you may have they might be like, we're not.
Yeah,
we're not down with that, or they have had bad experiences. So I think that's just the representation on the side that, look, the clinicians understand your culture, or the clinicians are from the same place you're from, or the clinicians can speak your language. All those things are going to help foster trust in the care that you guys are providing. Share a little bit. I know we're kind of going to go jump back a little bit, but I want to know about young Marlon. What'd you study? Yeah. When did you get the vision for Empower You? Maybe share a little bit of where you cut your teeth.
Sure.
And met some of the folks that are now your colleagues in this great organization.
Sure. Lot to unpack there. So what I would say is, in terms of the academic journey, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I kind of talk to my son about this often, like finding your passion and kind of figuring it out. I think that when I was on my own journey to unpack some of my own childhood, some of the attitudes that I developed, some of the things that I might have experienced, or try to better understand either what was going on around me or how did I interact with my, environment. I found myself in a position to actually start working at an organization that was doing something very similar, but this is not what I wanted to do initially. Like if I had listened to my parents, I would have done something that they would have been proud to call the home country back and say, oh, my son is this, my son is this, my son is that. When I came and I told my mom I want to be an entrepreneur, entrepreneur, what's that?
Is that a job?
Yeah.
Don't sound like a job.
Yeah, right. But then proceed to tell me about other people's kids. Like that's like some of the pressures that I had growing up all the time. It's like, well, Ramon is going to UConn and da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, yo, listen, man, like, what I'm choosing for myself had to be my own journey. That's when I started to kind of break free, but it did take me kind of looking back a little bit. And when I did look back at some of the things that I wanted to adjust in my life and things that I would have adjusted or maybe wanted help with when I grew up, this job as a youth mentor actually made sense to me, right? I looked at it almost like a new beginning, right? The things that, like, now you're a big brother, right? Now you're a person who says, you know what? Yes, I might have burned my hand on the stove, but at least I get to tell you that it was hot so you don't do it too, right? And I loved that position. So even though it wasn't something that my parents were going to be happy with me doing, I still proceeded to go down that path. So I actually dropped out of a pre-law program to do this. I was supposed to be a lawyer, right? As you guys can tell, I could talk all day. I would have been great at it. But, I wanted to pursue what was actually in my heart because it literally hit me in a place that I've never known that kind of activation, right? Because before it was about the money. It was about the prestige of going to the right university, the prestige of making the right, you need to make six figures, you need to do this, you need to have the 2.5 kids in a white picket fence, and that's success. What I realized in that moment is that success is only what I define it to be for myself, right? And so I started on this journey. I created one organization that I ran for 10 years, really just focusing on the youth mental health and mentoring piece of things. Then I took 3 years off to actually be a father to my son because I was putting a lot of time and a lot of work in. And what was more important to me actually was spending that time with my son, and created Empower You after that third year and came back. And when I did, I came back with the idea that if my people can actually do this purpose-filled work, whatever their purpose comes from, but they can do it in a way where they can enjoy things in life, the simple things in life like time with family, vacations, etc., that we'd actually make a good environment where people can walk in their purpose, but still do, very meaningful work at a very large scale, right? That became a part of what we put into our foundation. And then I found people that were crazy enough to believe a guy who would actually meet you at a Starbucks because he could not afford an office and didn't have one, right? And actually explain to them where I thought this was going, and then using some of the experiences and being authentic and vulnerable about my own history, my own whys, and trying to access their whys. And so I do have a monster team, I call them my tribe, of folks that actually have believed in the vision since day one. Some of them I've known for many, many years. And we've been on this journey together for almost 10 years now.
Amazing. Now, what was your thought process in assembling this team? Because when you're building teams, it's like the Avengers, right?
Yes.
You need certain superpowers that complement others. And tell us a little bit about how you begin to assemble that dream team.
So I'm gonna be old school. While we're trying to be cool with the younger generation and saying the Avengers right now, I'm gonna say Voltron, right?
Force 5.
Force 5, right?
You just got all the bonus points. With your
You know what I
boy.
mean? This is why I love this place, right? And so when you take a look at an organization, what an organization needs, like, you have to kind of take this bird's eye view and then be able to kind of laser focus in, like, piece by piece into different areas of the organization. I would say to, like, startup founders, sometimes when you're a solopreneur, when you have to literally touch everything to make it move, you should document your experience, right? You should actually, start taking inventory of the different things that you do, because what you'll eventually do is start associating those different elements of the inventory with actual roles, with actual jobs that you can actually shape, right? And then you got to ask yourself, well, now who do I need, right? So do I need a person for learning and education, for instance? Because onboarding is a big challenge. We need to get people not only to be to understand what they're supposed to be doing here, but to feel very efficacious, to have a very strong can-do spirit in actually going out to do it, right? How do we build that up in them? Well, what kind of knowledge do they need? What kind of motivation do they need? What kind of organizational resources and policies can we put in place? Okay, cool. There's a person for that. Right. When you're talking about, how do I get somebody to increase someone's clinical knowledge? Well, now we have a person for that. When this person is struggling with an HR related issue, like, hey, I'm buying my first house. This literally just happened over the weekend and they're asking for this documentation. I don't know how to do it. There's a person for that. Right. But you as a solopreneur in the beginning, you did all of those things. Right. So if you associate things, kind of categorize them and associate them a certain kind of way, you'll start to identify the different roles. But then you have to find people who, have a personal why that's actually attached to what the mission is, right?
Alignment.
Person to organizational alignment. You have to make sure that part is there, because if they're attached to the organization, then you ask them to fill this role and they actually have the requisite skill set. Are you going to be able to access the best efforts this person can offer toward that role? Because that's really what you need, right?
Absolutely. Now, I know that one of your colleagues is from a different frat. Unfortunately.
Yeah,
but they're all right.
Dr. Rios actually texted me on the way up. He texted me on the way up here. He's like, "Hermano, good morning." And I was like, "Yo, I'm in your hood." And because he's from Connecticut. Yeah. So it's almost like something woke him up and just said, "Hey, Marlon's going to be in your hood repping his letters from his frat today." And he just reached out to me out of nowhere. Dr. Rios is hands down the most brilliant person I think I've ever met, because he is a lifelong nerd. He loves, we say we have nerd culture at Empower You. Like, we always want to push like continuous learning. Like, he's the only person I know that pushes it so hard, but it's so effortless for him. He's just naturally inquisitive, naturally he wants to learn. He wants to grow. He wants to share, right? Hey, look at what I found about generative AI and mental health today. And imagine this, that, and the third. You're like, bro, slow down.
He has that passion.
I haven't even had my coffee yet, man. Yeah, you're already at 100, but he's amazing.
Gina, shout out to Gina.
Yeah, shout out to Gina. Gina is my resident pain in the behind. I remember when I brought Gina on, she's my chief of staff, executive assistant, type of role, kind of grew into chief of staff role, handling some other more advanced level business pieces for us. And I remember I went through her profile and I said, okay, BNY Mellon, Ernst & Young, MBA. All right, cool. This is the kind of person that can keep up with me, right? That's what I was looking for. Went through 2 interviews, had her meet with my COO, who I'll talk about in a second. Tamara Masadi's amazing. Had us, meet up. And then he was like, yeah, if that's, kind of where you want to go with that, if you think she can handle this, that, and the third, you should go ahead and hire her. So I already knew by the time he gave the okay, it was a green light. So then I jokingly, because this is kind of what I do, I set up a 3rd interview. I'm like, hey, listen, we're between you and another candidate, Gina. It wasn't true. So we're gonna need a 3rd interview, and I only have 1 burning question. And she was okay, fine. What is it? I said, have you ever babysat a grown ass man? And because that's kind of what it's like sometimes when you are an entrepreneur and you're kind of all over the place and you're flying, everywhere 1,000,000 miles per hour. You need that person that's going to be like, hey, slow down. Gina's that person that's like, hey, did you eat today? I kind of forgot. She goes, yeah, you keep doing that. All right, listen, I'm going to go to Whole Foods. I'm going to drop something off at your house. You let me know when you're ready. Okay, cool. Something happens and maybe we have a major win at work. She's like, well, how do you want to, celebrate and honor the people? Because she knows that's first on my mind to do. Mm-hmm. Here's some ideas. Here's some suggestions, whatever. We just suffered a loss. She's like, okay, well, how are you going to communicate with the people? I know you're crafting something. Make sure you're not beating yourself up too much, right? Like, she's that person, right? So she's pretty cool that way. Tamer Mossad, he's my COO. He's absolutely amazing. He's actually one of those guys who met me at a Starbucks, right? And he met me at the Starbucks and he wanted 6 hours a week of work. And I was like, listen, you're probably going to end up being a partner here someday. He's like, you just met me like 10 minutes ago. I'm like, yeah, but I feel your vibe. I feel your energy. And I'm probably completely freaking this guy out. just
like, slow down, dude.
yeah, exactly. Probably completely giving him like white van with a little yellow,
can we go on a second date first?
Yeah, like I'm giving him vibes. Like he's just like, hey, listen, here's my location. I just want to let you know just in case anything happens. Like I knew he was going to be amazing. I knew he was going to be amazing when I met him. And I think as an entrepreneur, like you can just feel it. Like when you get a vibe with people and you feel like they're going where you're going and they're passionate about what you're passionate about. I feel like there's just this thing that just kind of clicks off and just lets you know, like this one here, this should be safe, this should be good, right? You still want to give it time, you still want to watch it, you still want to monitor it, you still want to shape it, right? But you feel by and large at the end of the day, this is going to be something that works. And 9 years later, as my COO, it is. He came for a part-time gig and ended up finding a full-on career with us. And then, of course, I can't forget my ladies, Erica Rodriguez and Sharon Diaz, who are partners who kind of run the areas, local regions of the business, giving all the support in certain areas of the state of New Jersey. We kind of break everything down into geographic ranges. They do a tremendous job with that. They are super business savvy, but have like that that iron fist and a velvet glove kind of approach. Like they're very caring, but they don't go with the BS, including from me, right? And you need those accountability partners as a part of your team.
Accountability is huge.
Huge.
Empower You is different. How so? Because the typical state agency doesn't get the best rap. You don't expect the best care. You're kind of like, especially for our communities, they typically get what we used to call the healthcare centers. They're not getting, like, at least in the past. But I think Empower You and what you're doing is trying to change that through technology and the relatability we discussed. Tell us a little bit more about how this is such a game changer in this space.
Yeah, I mean, I think that our view of people is actually a lot different. I think that when you look at, and to go back to the education thing, so, Fordham University, organizational leadership, Michigan State, management strategy leadership, University of Southern California, organizational change and leadership doctoral degree. And I'm actually at Brown right now for my executive MBA, studying all the same nonsense. And I say that to say this, the training kind of teaches you to look at systems, to look at, and kind of break them down, take entire systems and kind of break them down into their functional parts. And when I look at that I don't want to say a stigma, because it's actually largely correct. You get agencies, that are working with states, like, what are they actually most concerned with that cause them to actually earn this rep? Because they've earned that rep. They have folks that I consider furniture. These are people who just come there for the gig. They're here for the security. I'll just sit down and just, you try not to get written up today, right? Like, that's like kind of their attitude coming in. And so I look at the value of people and culture, right? That actually does make us very different. Some of the organizations that employ these people long term are organizations where, as long as the numbers are okay, they're okay, right? So they're looking to grind out as many billable hours as possible. They're looking to make sure that there might be certain compliance level numbers. So this is just getting by, not getting way above, right? They just have this kind of like coasting kind of attitude, and it's actually reflected through their people, which then is reflected in the care people receive, and that's how we receive and perceive them, right? With us, we do look at the value of people's why. When you come to this organization, we need to know you have strong growth needs, right? We are a learning organization. So you might come here fresh out of your bachelor's degree, but just in the last year alone, we have over 60 people in our organization of nearly 500 that have actually graduated from that bachelor's level to their master's to actually being licensed. And when we talked about the licensing and how their representation in the community, especially communities of color, a lot of them are of that those communities, right? Representative of those communities. That's the stuff that we look for. If you're coming here to just be a piece of furniture and just sit down and just collect a check, this is not the organization for you, and that's got to be okay with both of us, right? So that's kind of our attitude that makes us a little different. We want people that go above and beyond. We want people that really care not just about learning, but growing and providing the best services they can. We want people to access their purpose in what they do. So if there's a particular population, like I have a therapist who discovered recently that she loves working with mothers. There's particular challenges that she likes working. She wanted to work with a mother's group that has an individual counseling component. She came to us with the idea and says, hey, can you launch it? Absolutely. Right? We want that level of effort. And I think that's the difference, that we realize we don't do it by ourselves. This is not Marlon Gray, the CEO and founder, making all the end all be all decisions for the organization. We collectively bring our best inside and, in and out every single day. We bring our best, right? And so that starts with our people at any level, any job, any category that they work in.
Excellent. And we're grateful to have been tapped to work with you. on the branding and the UI and the UX. Maybe share a little bit about how this platform that you guys are behind is going to help a lot of people.
Sure. So yes, it's an absolute pleasure to work with you guys for multiple reasons. I have to say, I think the fact that I'm able to come up here and be a typical founder who's just super nerdy and passionate about what their business is, then to have somebody take all of that and capture it and translate it into a logo icon, and it says, hey, listen, this is also how far you can go with that. It's beautiful, right? Because it's like somebody who sees what you see, understanding you're using the most words in America, which I tend to do. But you're passionate about what you're passionate about. You guys are able to, like, again, capture it and say, okay, here's what it looks like in web. Here's what it feels like, in a UI for an app that you're building and developing. That stuff is absolutely gold to entrepreneurs, and it should be, right? We are really passionate about what we're passionate about, but the things that we don't know, we have to embrace. And this is like an Achilles heel for a lot of folks. But a quick conversation with you, which conversations with me are hardly ever quick, really translated that into something powerful that my team absolutely loves, and they feel more engaged with the organization, et cetera. But when we came to you before we actually gave you that larger project, we came with something very simple. Like, we just want UI and a logo for an immersive, learning management system. Can't give too much detail with regard to the ins and outs of that part, but do know that it's challenging that same piece that we talked about licensing, right? And actually how we assess who has the clinical skills to be licensed. So we're challenging that overall structure now to actually bring equality to the game and more representation to the field.
That's awesome. Maybe share a success story and lead that into the ideal client or family that you service, and what would be the best way for them to reach out?
Sure. I mean, I do share this story often, and it's kind of interesting because I ran into one of the folks from this particular story, again, because of the nature of the work that we do. Like, you'll notice I'm probably using a lot of words to get around certain things because I can't directly say certain things. HIPAA, IP, stuff like that. And so there's certain things I can and can't say. But this particular family that we worked with years ago, I was working with one parent as a parent coach. We had a behavioral assistant and a therapist working with the young man that was in the home. It was a single mother, originally from Harlem, Black and Latino youth that we were working with. And there were some complex behavioral challenges, right, with this particular child. And mom had her own mental health issues as well. And that was affecting some of the parenting and also rubbing off on the child and things of that nature. So they put a team in there. And when I put that team in there, I remember listening to the mother, and maybe this is almost the birth of the whole cultural relatability thing. Like, she was like, these people, they don't know me. She's like, thank God it's somebody Black. Like, they keep sending these white people. Shout out to all white people. It's not a knock, but I've come to realize, but it's just that how, again, meeting your audience, right? This is her perception of how she's going to engage with treatment, right? That she obviously needed, right? So when we surrounded the family with services, the behavioral assistant, who was really like a youth mentor, was like very relatable to this young man because he's also, he's Dominican and Black, right? He's also from he's from the Heights, not from Harlem, but he's from New York, right? They had a lot of stuff in common. So that barrier, just that relatability in itself, allowed that child to open up to this person and talk more about his experiences. And that piece actually got them to exploring things that were alternatives to some of the at-risk behavior. One of those things actually turned out to be baking. Baking then turned into entrepreneurship. That turned into his cookies being in bodegas, then going into Starbucks, then going into other major establishments. Whoa. This ended up with, them being on TV shows again. Trying to watch what I'm saying here, ending up on TV shows. Young man's actually in college now. He's done his thing, right? And I just ran into the mom just last week. It is because for there's so much purpose that's in that, not just for me, but for everybody that's involved. Like, there's a therapist there, there's a behavior specialist that's there, a parent coach that's there, and there's also the parent and the child, all in that same system. I think that's another one of the things that makes us different. We're accounting for that 360 value proposition. How do we all receive value from this engagement together? And to see it come out as beautiful as it was, knowing where it started to where it got to, when you see, you know, this young man, you see a newspaper article out of nowhere, you know, Ernst & Young event, they're picking the guy up now as, you know, as a somebody to support or whatever. Like, you see all these amazing things. You're like, damn, just imagine if we didn't have that engagement and did not identify what those things are. So like when I talked about the 97%, well, now for me, it just went down to 96, right?
Yeah, and then we shouldn't be outliers. You know, we need to figure out how can we get more of the people. It's like I say, it's not how far you go; it's how many people can you bring with you.
Facts.
You know,
big facts.
So why don't you share your handles and the website and anywhere else that folks can get more information on Empower You?
Oh, sure. So you can find us online at www.justempower.me. The idea for us is that if we can empower ourselves first, we have more to pour back out to the people that we serve. And that is actually being handled by this beautiful team here in this room. So thank you guys. Give you guys your credit on that one.
Kevin's never been called beautiful before, but
first time for everything.
Well, welcome, sir. Welcome.
Feels nice.
Welcome. But then also on Instagram, we are Empower You, the letter U.
All right, man. Excellent. Well, I'm so glad you didn't become a lawyer because you're using your superpowers for good.
Thank you.
To help so many people with this amazing company, and they couldn't have a better leader than Dr. Marlon Gray. So thanks for coming up.
Hey, real recognize real, as they say. I see what you're doing here with your team, and it's absolutely beautiful, brother.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
All right, thank you, brother. Thank you for having me.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of Mission Control. Until next time, this is your host, Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we launch brands.